All right, today we're diving into one of the most powerful but also most misunderstood parts of your fitness journey, and that is understanding training with intensity. Now, what are we going to be talking about in this video? We're going to be going over what training intensity means, so what it means to train with intensity. We're also going to be talking about the differences between training at home versus in the gym, because there are some variations, some pros and cons there. And we're going to be talking about what it really means to push to failure. So if all that sounds interesting, make sure you stick around to the end and we'll get some knowledge out of this. Starting us off. Everyone knows that training intensity just equals effort plus load plus focus. Now, what do I mean by this? Let's break it down. Effort is going to be how close you are to your limits, right? So the perception of effort that you're putting in to every single set, every single rep. Your effort needs to be pushing with maximal capacity to recruit as many motor units to stimulate as much growth as possible. Next thing, load is going to be the actual weight or resistance that you're moving. Whether it's a dumbbell, a barbell, maybe you're using some machines, maybe you're using some kettlebells, whatever it is, that's going to be the resistance that you're going to be pushing or pulling against depending on what movement you're training. Now, the last thing is going to be your focus, the mental side. So locking in, making sure that you have controlled form and minimizing distractions. If you're distracted, if your neural drive is dedicated to external factors that aren't towards your set or aren't going to be productive towards building muscle, you're not going to be seeing the best results, which is okay, but we want to maximize the amount of growth we get out of every single set. That's what it means to train with intensity. So now that we know that training intensity is just effort plus load plus focus, let's break down how we can accurately gauge what that looks like. So now that we know that we need high amounts of effort during a set in order to see results, there are two ways that we can accurately track that. The first is going to be using the reps in reserve method, and the second is going to be the rate of perceived exertion method. Both are good, both have a time and a place. One of them is going to be more for your subjective scale, right? So how much you think that you could have done versus reps in reserve, which is more of a set in stone number that you can accurately identify. So reps in reserve, or RIR, is just a number of additional reps you could have done with good form during a set before reaching absolute failure. Now for RPE, or rate of perceived exertion, it's going to be the subjective scale, usually from 1 to 10, that quantifies how hard a set felt overall, right? So it's going to be basically how difficult you think the set was, 0 being you didn't really feel a difficult set whatsoever, maybe it was a warm-up, and 10 being it was super hard, you probably could have not done another rep. And the RIR, or reps in reserve, is simply how many reps you think you could have done after you finished the set. So 0 being you had 0 reps left, and 5 being maybe you could have done 5 more. You can also go a little bit higher, maybe it was a warm-up set, maybe you could have done 6, maybe 7 more reps, but it's all up to how many reps you think you had in reserve, and you can write that down in your logbook and kind of gauge how many more you want to push for next time in order to hit that number. Because ideally, if you're training with effort, if you're training with intensity, you want to be training close to failure, close to that 2, 1, maybe even 0 reps in reserve. So that's why if we're trying to track all of our sets and reps, it's good to track using the reps in reserve method as opposed to the rate of perceived exertion method, because it's more subjective when you're doing RPE versus if you want to actually quantify how many reps you could have had left. That was long-winded. Let's move on to where you can get the best efforts. Choosing your training environment is very important, because depending on where you choose to train, that can determine how good of a workout you might have or how close you can get to failure, right? Training with more intensity. So the two places you can choose are you can either train at home or you can train in the gym. There's some pros and cons for both. We're gonna go over those right now. So starting us off with training at home. It's pretty convenient, right? Convenience is key when training from home. You have no excuses to not go to the gym because you're already at the gym at your house. You can get off work, start doing your dumbbell workouts. You can, finish dinner, go on the treadmill, go for a walk. It doesn't really it takes out the whole driving to the gym, taking your pre-workout aspect, because you're already in that environment. So it removes any and all excuses not to go to the gym. The second thing that's awesome about training at home is that you have limited equipment. Now, that can be awesome and that cannot be awesome. And we'll talk about why not when we get to the training in the gym. But a reason why that's pretty good is because if you're a newbie lifter or you're a beginner lifter, you have less things to confuse yourself with. All you have to do is focus on your basics, push-ups, pull-ups, maybe some bands, maybe some dumbbells, maybe you have a bench, maybe you're lucky and you have a whole home gym, maybe equipment's not limited. But if you do have limited equipment and you're starting off as a newbie lifter, it's really easy to just stick to the basics and start progressing that way. So again, no excuse to, I don't know how to use the equipment, because you have limited equipment to use. And number 3, there's gonna be fewer distractions when you train at home. Now this is and isn't true depending on your circumstances. If you're someone that lives alone and you have your home gym, of course there's gonna be no distractions. It's just you, the weights, or whatever resistance you're gonna be using for your training. But if you live with maybe your family, maybe you have a family, they might be bothering you, maybe you have pets that are gonna get in the way of your exercises, that can kind of be a bother. Let your family know that you're working out, you let them give you your space, so you have full capability of locking in and getting the most out of every set, every rep of every exercise. So a couple good reasons why you should train at home. Next, let's take a look at training in the gym. So first and foremost, we're gonna have more equipment to choose from. Obviously, you're at the gym, they have almost anything and everything you could imagine when it comes to resistance training. Now, depending on the gym that you go to, they might have stuff that is only found at the gym. They might have things that are specific to the sport that you're training for or specific to your goals. So that's something that is a benefit when it comes to going to the gym rather than training at home. Another thing that is great when working out at the gym is that it's easier to progressively overload. Now, it's a lot easier to progressively overload when you're at the gym as opposed to lifting from home, simply because you have easier resources to progressively overload with. Yes, you can progressively overload at home with dumbbells, kettlebells, whatever form of exercise that you have, but eventually you're going to run out of ways to overload that. But at the gym, you can just always add on another plate. You can always add on another pin on the weight stack for the cable machine. It's really easy to progressively overload without having to hassle and change the movement completely. Or another thing that training at the gym is going to get you that training at home just isn't, is it's going to help you with your energy levels. When you're training in an environment that has lots of people in the same environment with the same goals, training with intensity, you're more likely to train with intensity. It's just the way it works. If you see more people training with high levels of effort, you're gonna be more likely to train with high levels of effort. So surrounding yourself with the right kind of people in the right kind of environment is gonna help you get to your goals a lot faster than just kind of training at home, where you could potentially be sleepy one day, the couch is looking awful comfy, it's just sitting right over there, and you're gonna go take a nap instead. So training in the gym, you don't have that opportunity to kind of give up on yourself, and you have that energy boost from people around you, motivating you and cheering you on. Or maybe they're not even doing that. Maybe you're still locked in your own zone, but because there's other people around, you gotta keep moving, you gotta lock in, get to the next machine before someone else does. So again, that could be a benefit of going to the gym. Now, another one is gonna be its potential for distractions. Now, that's not really a plus, obviously. That one friend that's gonna come in and start yapping all the time might be a distraction if you're going to the gym, and that's completely understandable. There's a time and a place for yapping, but the gym is just not it. So if that is an issue that you're running into, maybe training at the gym isn't gonna be a good fit for you, or maybe you're the yapper that just talks and talks and talks. Maybe you should train from home. So there's gonna be pros and cons to working out at the gym and working out at home. Whatever is better for your specific goals is up to you, but those are just the pros and cons that I've come up with for training at the gym versus training at home. If you can think of any other pros and cons for each, go ahead and leave them in the comments. I'll go ahead and respond, maybe add them to the next video. Moving on. All right, so what does it actually mean to push to failure, right? What does pushing to failure mean? Well, there are two kinds of failure, right? There's muscular failure and there's technical failure. What's the difference? Muscular failure is when you cannot contract the muscle anymore, right? Under any circumstances. So if I was doing a bicep curl and I'm curling my arm up, muscular failure would be where even if I'm cheat repping, if I'm swinging a little bit, I cannot contract my bicep any further. Muscular failure. Now, for technical failure, it's a little further away from true failure or muscular failure, and that's going to be if I'm contracting with perfect technique, doing a bicep curl, and I can't get a bicep curl all the way up. That's where form starts to break down. That's what technical failure looks like. but it's not total muscular failure. Very subtle differences. One is going to be failing with good technique, and then the other one is going to be failing under all circumstances. So now that we know the different kinds of failure, let's talk about some examples. So an example of stopping too soon and not going to failure would be leaving around maybe 6 or 7 reps left in the tank. So if you're doing a set of like leg press and it looks like this, where you're pushing close to failure, you're using high degrees of motor unit recruitment, and you're actually pushing to the involuntary slowing of the contraction, you're going to be getting close to failure, right? But if you're stopping too soon, maybe leaving 6 or 7 reps in the tank, it's not going to be resulting in good growth stimulus, and you're not really going to be getting the benefit for the effort that you're putting in. So that's going to be an example of stopping too soon, leaving 6 to 7 reps in the tank. Now, pushing close to failure is going to be great. Maybe leaving 1 to 2 reps in the tank is also going to be just as good for seeing consistent growth over a longer period of time. Studies show that you don't necessarily have to go to complete muscular failure in order to see optimal results for muscle growth. You just have to take it close to there, more specifically getting to that involuntary slowing of the contraction. Now, what does this look like for sets and reps? Now, for your sets and reps, it's going to be different depending on if you're a beginner versus if you're an intermediate versus if you're someone that's advanced. I have a whole video going over sets and reps explained. It's called Rep Ranges 101. You can check it out after this video. The gist of it is if you're a beginner lifter, you're going to want to do more reps because that's going to allow you to get more practice getting closer to failure and also allowing you to train and get better technique, right? If you're a more intermediate and advanced lifter, you're going to want to train with higher intensity and lower rep ranges to minimize the amount of fatigue that you're generating while stimulating adequate amounts of muscle growth. So make sure you go check out that video, Rep Ranges 101, after this one. All right, hopefully this helps you guys train with more intensity and start to see the best results possible when it comes to whatever your goals are fitness-wise. If you guys want to start tracking your progress consistently, make sure you pick up one of our SweatSphere logbooks where you can track your exercises, your sets and reps using our formatted pages. And you can also track things like your hydration, your cardio, your recovery that you did for that day, as well as your thoughts and reflections at the bottom of the page. This book also includes a place to set your SMART goals, and it also comes included with your measurement tracker, which is going to help you track your progress and see your progression month to month as you progress with your fitness journey. All right, I hope that helps. My name is Josh. Link to our school is in the description, as well as our free macronutrient calculator. And don't forget to watch our video on how to track your macros and nutrients, because that goes hand in hand with training to failure with intensity. So make sure you go and watch one of these 2 next videos, and I will see you guys inside of the SweatSphere.